Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Back in 2003, where you took over as CEO, there were 40 Indigenous players on AFL list, almost double now. There was a conscious effort from yourself to create more opportunities for Indigenous players.
Oh, look, I don't think it was a conscious effort just from myself. I would have to say that this was a combined effort by people within this organisation and our clubs. And everybody's always known that our Indigenous players are wonderfully gifted at the game and that this is an Indigenous game. But I think our clubs have just become much more professional, and with the Players Association and their programs, in being able to help all of our players, not just Indigenous players, and with various induction programs and things like the induction camp for the Indigenous players is just one example. And I think all of us have become much better at understanding, how to induct Indigenous players into the system, much better at how to identify the Indigenous players. There's some really wonderful, innovative programs out there today. Even the Clontarf Academy that Gerard Neesham heads up, and I think the combination of all those things and all the learnings has just meant that we've seen this number grow to double, and I think our percentage now is about 11% of our player list is Indigenous, which I think we're really proud of.
How has the AFL managed to increase the amount of Indigenous players playing in the AFL in the past 8 years?
Oh, look, I think without doubt there's much more sophisticated recruiting, and the investment in recruitment at each club is several hundreds of thousands of dollars now. We certainly in the AFL, through our talent identification program, have invested in that area as well. If you layer on top of that other programs that others are doing, particularly in our state through our state bodies and their talent identification, that's added to the number of Indigenous players being identified. If you then throw in programs like the Kickstart program, the boomerangs. And you start to think about those programs like Gerard Neesham's Clontarf Academy, all of those go to identifying young Indigenous talent. And it's no wonder we've seen the number double, and we've targeted to get 100 Indigenous players within the next couple of years, and I think we'll get there.
Why is it so important to keep creating these opportunities for Indigenous people?
I think it's really important. I think it's important for a number of factors. One is I think we should, through our game, be able to afford opportunity to everybody, regardless of their race, religion. The fact that Indigenous players bring such beauty to our game and complement the game so wonderfully, I think makes our game greater. I think it's terribly important from the perspective our game's always been an inclusive game, and it's an egalitarian game. It doesn't discriminate at all. And I think we've seen through the Indigenous contribution, not just what we see on the field, but what's happened off the field is remarkable. That through the racial and religious vilification program we've got, I think we've shifted the attitude significantly of people within the industry. But now we've seen it shift on the other side of the fence. That in the crowd, I don't think we're hearing sorts of comments we used to hear. And when we do, people are outraged, and it's normally the crowd turns on other members of the crowd, and I think that's a really good thing.
The Dreamtime game and the Indigenous round has been a huge success over the past years. In your eyes, will there be ever a time that we change our views on this?
Look, they might not be as important, but they'll be replaced by something that's even more important. And what that is, I don't know. I think the Dreamtime game is really important today at this point in time because it helps raise awareness. It's been such an accepted game. I mean, the crowds have been extraordinary, the ratings have been extraordinary. The people who attend and contribute to that game has been phenomenal. But in time, it'll be replaced by something that even raises awareness further, and for the better. What that is, it'll be on someone else's watch, I would imagine.
Andrew, you come from a Greek Cypriot background. You were able to play with the two most talented Indigenous players going around the AFL in the Cracker brothers. What sort of effect did they have on you as a player after you left North Melbourne?
Well, I'll never forget when the Crackers arrived, because I was in my first year at North. It was in 1981, and Jimmy and Phil arrived, and they were very shy, and we'd heard about this wonderful talent that they both had, and this instinct for each other. That we'd heard all this stuff that they've got this remarkable instinct to be able to find each other on the field, and I remember the first few training sessions, particularly at Holland Park in the heat. I was just watching these guys, and they were absolutely knackered, because I don't know if they'd ever experienced a pre-season like it. But slowly but surely, they just started to do things on the training track that you started to scratch your head, and this sort of instinct, this almost sixth sense that they had for each other, you could start to see what they were talking about. And once we got into a game, they just switched it on, and I used to just marvel at it. And what's been really pleasing to see, it's like a bit like the father-son. You know, when you're watching, you know, some of the young crackers running around today, you see lots of Jimmy and Phil. And, you know, just watching Andrew Cracker do some of the things he's been doing recently, and then watching Nathan Cracker, they're all gifted. They've all got some of the same skill. But, you know, Jimmy and Phil were two out of the box, no doubt about it. There was always an argument who was better. And I guess considering my background, for me, football was just a great equaliser. So I never had to experience any of the discrimination. I played football at school and through, you know, junior competitions, and I'd never experienced anything that was discriminatory. And because you could play a bit, that made you more accepted. But I did watch Jimmy and Phil go through a lot of stuff, particularly on the field. And I've just been so pleased to see a lot of that's been eradicated, if not all of it.
Andrew, you must be happy with the expansion of the competition with the Gold Coast, and happy with the opportunities that they've given Indigenous players for their team. Do you hope that they keep improving on searching for Indigenous talent in Queensland?
Oh, I've got no doubt they will, and I've got no doubt it'll happen at the Giants as well in Greater Western Sydney, given that we've got a very large Indigenous population in the Greater Western Sydney. I think it's 150-odd thousand. And we know that they're very talented at NRL and, of course, in rugby. So it stands to reason that there's some talent hiding in there that's awaiting the overtures of the AFL, I hope. But I've got no doubt the expansion provides wonderful opportunities for all the players. The players who might be discarded from clubs, might not be given a second chance, now give a second chance. And for any new talent out there. And in amongst all that, I reckon there'll be at least 11%. Will be Indigenous. That seems to be the right number. And on top of that, Chris, what's really pleasing is that we just don't want to confine it to players. You know, it's great that Michael O'Loughlin, for example, is coaching our AIS Academy. It's great that we've just appointed Andrew McLeod to be assistant coach of the international rules. We've targeted 4% growth in employment of Indigenous participation in our employment sector in the industry. So we don't, you know, I know we're making great strides in players, but we want to see the growth in other areas. We want to see the growth in media. We want to see the growth in our administration. We want to see the growth at clubland, and whether they're coaches or in other areas, because it's really, really important that we just don't confine it to players.
Just to follow up that last bit that you've just mentioned now, in your view, as you just expressed now, Indigenous people stepping up to more senior leadership roles such as executive level, board level, coaching, and even within media mainstream?
Oh, it's really important. If we're going to be true to our word about being an inclusive community, an inclusive society, that needs to happen. And we've probably been slow on the uptake, to be quite truthful. I mean, it surprises me that there's no representation in mainstream media. There's been very little uptake in coaches, and it's great to see more coaches coming through. I've got no doubt we'll see it in admin. That's a given. But I think it's really, really important, and I think all of us, it's incumbent on all of us to make sure that happens, and we've signed up to it anyway.
Andrew, back in the early 90s, Gilbert McAdam was the only Indigenous past player working in the AFL. Now there's a lot more. We've come a long way, haven't we?
Oh, we have, and we've even come so far. We've got a bloody Greek Cypriot running an Australian Rules Football League, which is even more bizarre. So no, we have, and it's great, and we can do so much more. But it's what the game's all about. The game is about as inclusive. It's about as non-discriminatory as you can get, and that's for all people from all walks of life. It doesn't matter about their demographic, about their socio-economic position, about their race, their colour, their creed. They're all welcome, and it's the great thing about this game that it's what happens on the field, we would try to reflect off the field. And I'm really proud to be part of it.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Well, thanks, Andrew, for your time.
Thank you, Chris.
Everyone from the show. So thanks very much for coming on.
All the best.
See you around the office, I guess.
I hope so.